What if I told you some data indicators out there are showing that another altcoin rotation has come and gone? Would you be satisfied that you took profits along the way? Or are you potentially frustrated that you haven't seized the moments and maybe left wondering to yourself, is there this rotation into risk on altcoins really coming as we have seen in the past? Bitcoin is a big reason why a lot of people maybe come to this space, but they do also come here obviously to speculate and grow portfolios. Access volatile products aren't really available anywhere else in the world, really. With that being said, and it's easy to understand with all the events that's taken place in 2025, why the whole subject of something as volatile as altcoins may be a very touchy subject for a lot of people, particularly if you've over-indexed in them in your own portfolios. Now, while we don't have a crystal ball, and to that point, no one has a crystal ball on what's actually going to happen next, what we do have is some access to some data points, which we're going to go over today. Have a look at what some of the indexes or measurements out there in the market are saying, but then also jump out and zoom out and look at the real big picture. And I think that's where maybe the value will be for everyone, because I believe everyone's going to be in two camps by the end of this video. But let's start off with the altcoin season index. Now, this is a aggregate of data looking at global movements of altcoins, from anything from volatility data to historic performances, as well as market capitalization ratios. There's a lot of things that go into this, as well as social sentiment that you can access for free on CoinGlass, that basically indexes the movements of altcoins on a scale of 0 to 100. So obviously we can see here we have periods where the market's considered overheated and potentially oversold as well. Now, if you line this up, we can see that most recently we have trekked into this period where you can consider altcoins overheated yet once again. Very similar to what we saw in December 2024, which a lot of people may remember. This whole emphasis of Q4 at the end of last year, that the bull market was really going to kick off and emulate what we saw in 2020, and that this year would be a mimic of 2021. Now, obviously, we've seen the tariff war since then, as well as other unrest around the world, Russia, Ukraine, the list goes on. It's really been a bit of a different story this year, obviously, and that's what we always say. But that being said, an indicator like this, is it potentially suggesting that we have hit valuations in altcoins very similar to that what we saw in December 2024? And we saw from that period, many altcoins take a massive battering, some down over 50%, if not more, during that period into, say, the middle of this year, when we did see a bit of a recovery and a flight of capital rotation back into altcoins. So obviously this sort of sets a tone that maybe they are potentially about to turn over and cool off. Now, another way that we can measure what the market has been thinking and its attitudes towards altcoins is looking at the derivative markets. So when you compare to something like Bitcoin, it really explains the market's behavior in terms of risk preferencing, is the way I like to look at it. How ready is a market to take on more and more risk? And what does that look like at points at which it's gone overheated? And then what does it look like at periods where that overexposure or over-indexing in altcoins has cooled off? Now, this is a chart from Coinalyze, which you can access for free as well, looking at the last 2 years. And the key call out that I would say is that most recently, towards the 20th of September, we did see the open interest. So the amount of interest really that's being put towards altcoins as an aggregate. So it's measured here by others, basically overtaking Bitcoin for a very brief period of time. And the last time that we saw this event happen was, again, back in December. So lining up with what this altcoin season index was alluding to, that there was just an over concentration of the market's expectations. Because let's face it, derivative markets, they do heat up when there's an over expectation on things to potentially, in this case, move higher, which we've now seen quite a bit of a sell-off. It's been quite steep. When we look at the top movers, anything in the top 10 is even down almost up to 10%. And the further you go down the list, you can see the damage. Something like Hyperliquid down almost 30% in the last 7 days. That kind of, it's enough to get people second guessing. Are we really going to see any further performances from these altcoin market sectors, which a lot of people potentially have been waiting for quite some time to see? And this last chart is going to explain just how long people have been waiting. So it's a very simple chart. It looks at the price movement of both Bitcoin and also a ticker called Others 3ES, which is very simply put a measure of altcoins, anything outside the top 10 by market cap, minusing any stable coins. So we're looking at just risk on exposure assets. So just think of this as the overall money that's been parked into both Bitcoin and money that's being parked into altcoin assets. Now, the key milestone that we can see in the past has been the break to all-time highs. That has historically triggered a rally that has lasted multiple months, both in Bitcoin and across the altcoin sector. Now, just to add a caveat to that, When we have seen these breaks in the altcoin market sector as well, it's not a case of all ships do rise. We have seen even in the last cycle, a lot of coins that or tokens that were around in 2015, 2016, 2017, not make new all-time highs in 2021. So again, just want to emphasize the importance of doing your own research, understanding what you're investing in. Head to Swyftx Learn if you're looking for a helping hand to do that. But the obvious thing on this chart is, if you can follow it, the blue line for most recently, the top we put in 2022 for all of this altcoin measurement, we haven't had that milestone breakthrough yet. We haven't had the point where we've put in new all-time highs and seen a trending environment really develop. We have seen these trends and they have been very localized, but they're very quick to basically sell down and sell off. And again, a lot of that does come down to a lot of the headwinds maybe we have seen in this post-COVID money printing recovery era that we are in, where inflation has been high, conditions have been tight, the budgets and purse strings by the governments are quite tight. And that means anything from just the availability of money, it has an impact on risk on markets like we are seeing. But that's also to say that, again, to go back to what I said earlier in this video, really you've got to ask yourself, there's two camps that you can be in. First camp being that you do expect the pattern that we have seen historically repeat, in the sense that we will see speculation returns to the sector. We will see the market basically park more money into altcoins eventually, because as you can see, it's been much, much longer that we've gone sideways here compared to previous cycles. Now, the second point that I want to make is obviously you could take the view that, all right, the market's maybe maturing. We're seeing institutions come in. A lot of the market cap growth that we've seen, it's been highly in Bitcoin these last couple of years. Maybe that's just how it's going to remain for now. Maybe with the pressure of home loan mortgages and consumer savings maybe not looking as well as they did in the past, maybe we won't see this rotation into altcoins. And this is basically what we're going to expect for the future moving forward. So again, you really have to ask yourself, do you expect it to be the same, or do you believe this time it's different? But I think the key call out for me that is, at the end of the day, markets have never moved in a straight line. The narratives can shift faster than many expect, to the point that a lot of people did expect an altcoin season, and now we haven't seen one, to the point where if everyone starts believing that we're not going to see one, there's every chance that we do see one when the market's not expecting it. So I think this just hits home the whole idea of, if you're doing your own research, you have your own conviction, you're managing your risk effectively, you've now had a good taste of what it looks like when a lot of these altcoins move obviously quite volatilely. As I mentioned, Hyperliquid, one of the darlings of the market this year. Even the likes of Solana and Sui, which have also seen adoption, seen growth, even institutional adoption, they're still down 20%. But then when you look at something like Bitcoin, it's down 6.8% in the last 7 days. So really, it does set the tone, obviously, that the market may be expecting too much just right now. And then as we do see macro conditions improve, like we have seen, obviously, the first rate cut in the US, still got to sit back and remember that we are in a tightening regime. There still is policy that is restrictive. So once that does loosen, what does that mean for our markets as well? And that's where I'll leave it today. But I thought it'd be great to cover the whole conversation right now on altcoins, particularly as we are seeing this sell-off in the market right now. Pav, I will catch you next week. Thanks, guys.